She feared the cosmic beast until humans cooked it for dinner. Commander Nadia Patel stared through the reinforced observation window, her breath creating small clouds of condensation on the transparent aluminum. Behind the barrier, writhing in what appeared to be equal parts fury and confusion, was the most feared entity in 3 galactic sectors, a Xenox beast. If anyone had told me this morning I'd be face to face with a cosmic horror, I would have suggested they visit medical for a psych evil, she muttered, making notes on her tablet. Beside her, Dr. Viktor Petrov adjusted his spectacles, an anachronistic accessory he insisted helped him think better than neural enhancements. Fascinating, he whispered, his Russian accent thickening with excitement. Look at the way its outer membrane shifts and refracts light. I've only seen references to this creature in xenobiological archives. No one has ever managed to contain one long enough for proper study. Lieutenant Rashid Hassan, head of security, cleared his throat. With all due respect, Commander Doctor, maybe we should be focusing less on studying it and more on removing it from the station. The containment field won't hold forever. Nadia understood his concern. The creature had emerged from a routine supply shipment 3 hours ago, sending the cargo bay into chaos. Only quick thinking and emergency protocols had prevented a complete disaster. Now, the beast occupied their primary containment chamber, a space normally reserved for studying potentially hazardous stellar phenomena. The lieutenant has a point, Nadia conceded, turning to face her team. But we can't simply eject it into space. First, it's proven capable of surviving in vacuum. Second, if it reaches any populated areas. She left the sentence unfinished. They all knew the stories. The Xenox beast was the stuff of spacers' nightmares. Reports spoke of entire colonies devastated, ships found drifting with crews vanished, and rescue teams discovering only molecular residue where thriving communities once stood. Yet here one was, trapped aboard Research Station Horizon, humanity's furthest permanent outpost from Earth. Dr. Petrov pressed his hand against the window, earning a sharp "doctor" from Hassan. The creature turned what they assumed was its sensory cluster toward the movement, its iridescent surface rippling with patterns of deep purple and electric blue. Look at this response to stimulus, Petrov said, ignoring the security chief's concern. It's not attacking mindlessly. There's calculation there. Intelligence. Intelligence or not, it's already dissolved through 3 layers of reinforced cargo containers, Hassan replied. The fact that it hasn't attempted to breach containment yet makes me more worried, not less. It's like it's waiting. Nadia was about to respond when her comm unit chimed. Commander, priority message from Central Command. The station's AI announced. They're routing a diplomatic vessel to our location. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Diplomatic vessel. Hassan frowned. Why would they send? Because, a new voice interrupted, making them all turn. Someone finally needs to explain to you humans why containing a Xenox beast is impossible, and why trying will likely get everyone on this station killed. Standing in the laboratory doorway was a figure none of them had ever seen before, though they recognized the species from xenobiological databases. Tall and elegant, with silvery skin that seemed to flow like liquid mercury, and 4 arms arranged in perfect symmetry, the being regarded them with what could only be described as celestial horror. I am Vixera, senior diplomatic envoy of the Luminary Concordat, the alien announced, all 4 hands moving in complex patterns that their universal translators interpreted as formal greeting gestures. And you have no idea what you're dealing with. On the contrary, Nadia replied, straightening her uniform and meeting the alien's gaze steadily. I think we have exactly the opportunity we need to understand something that's been terrorizing spacefaring species for centuries. The question is, Ambassador Vixera, are you here to help us learn, or to insist we repeat the same patterns of fear that have failed to solve this problem for generations? The Xenox beast shifted in its containment field, its surface now pulsing with deep crimson hues. Whether it was responding to the tension in the room or simply coincidence, none could say. But as Nadia and Vixera regarded each other across the laboratory, one thing became clear. The next few hours would either mark a breakthrough in interspecies cooperation or the final chapter in Research Station Horizon's brief history among the stars. Dr. Petrov, still fascinated by the creature's reactions, made another note in his ever-present paper notebook. "Commander," he said softly, "you might want to see this. The beast's molecular structure, it's beginning to change." The silence in the station's conference room felt heavier than a neutron star's core. Vixera's silvery form seemed to ripple with barely contained anxiety as she activated a holographic display with one of her 4 hands. The other 3 moved in intricate patterns that the universal translators were struggling to interpret, presumably expressions of extreme distress. 3 cycles ago, my homeworld's largest colony on Nexus Prime ceased to exist. She began, her melodic voice tight with emotion. 20,000 souls, gone. Not killed, simply gone. The Xenox beast doesn't just consume, it unmakes. Commander Patel leaned forward, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic images of devastation. Beside her, Dr. Petrov had finally set aside his paper notebook, his full attention captured by the astronomical readings being displayed. "The energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever encountered," Vixera continued. "Your containment field won't hold it. They never do. The beast is already adapting, learning, evolving. It's what they do. It's all they do." Lieutenant Hassan, standing guard by the door, shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, the latest readings from the containment cell show increasing molecular instability in the outer sectors. Whatever it's doing in there, it's accelerating." "Show me," Dr. Petrov interjected, pulling up the data on his tablet. His eyes widened behind his antiquated glasses. "This is extraordinary. The creature isn't trying to break through the containment field. It's attempting to understand it. Look at these pattern mutations." "Understanding is irrelevant," Vixera insisted, her silver skin now rippling with bands of darker gray. "A sign of extreme agitation, according to the xenobiological databases. The beast will consume your station, just as it has consumed countless others. The only reason I'm here is to evacuate as many of you as possible before that happens." Commander Patel stood slowly, her movement drawing all eyes in the room. "With respect, Ambassador, evacuation is not an option I'm willing to consider yet. This station represents humanity's furthest reach into the galaxy. More importantly, it houses research that could benefit countless species. If there's even a chance to understand this creature, to find a way to communicate with it or neutralize it without destruction, we have to try." "Fascinating," Dr. Petrov muttered, still absorbed in his readings. "Commander, look at this molecular analysis. The beast's outer membrane. It's not just changing shape, it's changing state. Almost like a protein denaturing under heat. This is not a science project." Vixera's voice rose, her translator struggling to maintain the proper tone. "You humans, always thinking you can study, understand, control. Some things in this universe are beyond understanding. Some things simply are. Nothing is beyond understanding," Dr. Petrov replied quietly, finally looking up from his tablet. "It may be beyond our current capabilities, yes, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. Commander, I think I might have an idea. It's unconventional." Before he could elaborate, the station's AI cut in with an urgent alert. "Commander, containment field stability at 60% and declining. Unusual energy signatures detected in adjacent sections. The beast appears to be cooking itself." "Cooking?" Lieutenant Hassan frowned. "What do you mean, cooking?" "The temperature in the containment field is rising," the AI explained. "But the heat isn't coming from our systems. It's being generated by the creature itself. Internal temperature approaching 150 degrees Celsius." Vixera's silver skin went almost white. "By the eternal stars," she whispered. "I've never seen one do this before. What have you done to it? We haven't done anything, Commander Petal replied, studying the readings. It's doing this on its own. But why? Dr. Petrov's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. Commander, remember what I said about protein denaturation? In biological terms, that's exactly what happens when we cook food. The heat changes the molecular structure of proteins, breaking down complex compounds into simpler forms. And look at these energy readings. They're almost exactly like. He was interrupted by a strange sound from the containment chamber's observation feed, a deep resonating hum that seemed to vibrate through the station's very structure. On the monitors, the Xenox beast's surface had stopped its chaotic writhing, and now pulsed with a steady, almost peaceful rhythm. It's not trying to escape, Dr. Petrov breathed, excitement overriding his usual scientific detachment. It's trying to transform. Commander, I believe we're witnessing something unprecedented in xenobiology. This creature isn't just adapting to survive, it's adapting to thrive. And it might have just given us the key to understanding its entire species. Vixera moved closer to the observation screen, all four of her arms now still in what the humans had learned to recognize as deep shock. Impossible, she murmured. In all our history, no one has ever. We never thought to. Commander Patel allowed herself a small smile. Doctor, I believe you mentioned an unconventional idea. I think now might be the perfect time to hear it. Yes, Dr. Petrov replied, already pulling up new data streams on his tablet. But first, Commander, I need to know, how well equipped is the station's kitchen? The station's culinary bay had never seen such an unusual gathering. Dr. Petrov had transformed the space into an impromptu laboratory, with holographic displays showing molecular structures floating above industrial cooking surfaces. Chief Engineer Juliette Dubois, originally summoned for her expertise with the station's thermal systems, now stood transfixed before a simulation of the Xenox beast's molecular structure. Mon Dieu, she breathed, her French accent thickening with excitement. It's exactly like Grandmare's recipe for coq au vin. The way the proteins break down under slow heat, creating new molecular bonds. Dr. Petrov nodded enthusiastically, adjusting his glasses. Exactly. The beast isn't trying to escape. It's attempting to reach a specific thermal state. Every time we've tried to contain one of these creatures, we've been fighting against its natural metamorphic process. Commander Petal studied the readings from the containment chamber. The creature's surface now rippled with gentle waves of amber and gold, its earlier aggressive movements replaced by an almost rhythmic pulsing. You're saying we've been treating it like a threat when we should have been treating it like a recipe, Julia finished, already pulling up the station's culinary database. Each time it encounters a new species or technology, it attempts to adapt by altering its molecular structure. But without the proper thermal conditions, it remains in an unstable state. Dr. Petrov continued. Aggressive, destructive, constantly seeking the right conditions for transformation. Commander, I believe every attack by these creatures has actually been an attempt to complete their natural life cycle. Vixera, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, moved her four arms in a pattern that suggested deep contemplation. Our histories speak of the beasts emerging from the hearts of dying stars. We assumed they were creatures of pure destruction. But what if? What if they're simply trying to recreate the conditions of their birth? Lieutenant Hassan, standing guard by the door, shook his head in disbelief. So all this time, we haven't been dealing with a cosmic horror. We've been dealing with an incomplete cooking process. Not exactly, Dr. Petrov replied, pulling up new data streams. The creature's molecular structure is far more complex than anything we've encountered. But the principle is similar. Heat causes proteins to denature and reform into new configurations. In human cooking, this process creates new flavors and textures. In the Xenox beast, it appears to facilitate an essential transformation. Juliette was already programming the culinary bay's thermal systems. If we adjust the containment field to match these thermal patterns. Doctor, look at this simulation. The molecular restructuring would be similar to the Maillard reaction in traditional cooking. Commander Patel watched the simulations with growing interest. How do we safely transfer the creature from containment to? We don't, Dr. Petrov interrupted, his excitement barely contained. We transform the containment chamber itself. Engineer Dubois has already shown me how we can repurpose the thermal regulation systems. With some modifications, we can create the perfect conditions for controlled molecular gastronomy on a cosmic scale. Vixera drifted closer to the simulations, her silver skin now showing traces of curious gold patterns that matched the beast's current coloration. In all our history of fear and destruction, not once did we think to simply provide what it needed. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the hardest to see, Commander Patel mused, especially when we're blinded by fear. Doctor, engineer, how soon can you have these modifications ready? The hardware changes will take 2 hours, Juliet replied, already sketching out plans on her tablet. But Commander, we'll only have one chance. If we get the temperature progression wrong, then we'll get it right, Commander Patel stated firmly. Humanity didn't reach the stars by backing down from a challenge. Doctor, you'll oversee the molecular monitoring. Engineer Dubois, I want you controlling the thermal systems personally. Lieutenant Hassan, maintain security protocols, but be ready to adjust containment field parameters on their mark. And me? Vixera asked, her translator conveying a complex mix of emotions. Commander Patel smiled. Ambassador, you're about to witness the first diplomatic dinner with a species your people have feared for generations. I'd say that makes you our guest of honor. In the containment chamber, the Xenox beast's surface had begun to emit a soft, pulsing light. The readings showed its molecular structure was already beginning to shift, as if anticipating the transformation to come. Dr. Petrov made one final adjustment to his calculations and looked up at his commander. Ready when you are, he said quietly. Though I must admit, this will be the first time I've helped cook something that's been terrorizing the galaxy. First time for everything, Doctor, Commander Patel replied. Let's make history, and possibly dinner. The modified containment chamber hummed with energy as Engineer Dubois made her final adjustments. The Xenox beast had positioned itself in the center of the space, its surface now a swirling canvas of gold and amber hues that seemed to respond to the changing thermal currents. Beginning thermal sequence, Juliet announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Starting at 120 degrees Celsius, increasing by 5 degrees every 3 minutes. Doctor, molecular stability. Dr. Petrov monitored the readings with intense concentration. Protein chains are beginning to realign. The outer membrane is becoming more organized, less chaotic. It's working, Commander. Commander Patel stood at the observation window, watching as the creature's surface began to emit a soft, pulsating light. Vixera, have you ever seen anything like this in your records? The alien diplomat moved all 4 hands in a negative gesture. Never. Our kind has fled from these beings for so long. To think that all they needed was the right environment to transform. Temperature now at 140 degrees, Juliet reported, detecting unusual energy signatures within the containment field. Lieutenant Hassan tensed as the chamber filled with a golden glow. Security systems detecting no threats, but these energy readings are off the charts. The beast's surface had begun to crystallize, forming intricate patterns that caught and reflected light like countless faceted gems. The process started at its core and spread outward in mesmerizing waves, each pulse accompanied by a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the station's hull. Molecular restructuring at 60% completion, Dr. Petrov announced, his voice tight with excitement. The protein chains are forming entirely new compounds. This isn't just a phase change. It's a complete metamorphosis. Vixera drifted closer to the window, her silver skin now reflecting the golden light from within. The stories never mentioned this. Generations of fear, of running, of loss. And all along, Sometimes the most profound discoveries come from asking different questions, Commander Patel replied softly. Instead of asking how to fight it, we asked how to help it. The chamber's temperature reached 160 degrees, and the transformation accelerated. The beast's crystalline surface began to segment, each section becoming more defined, more purposeful. The chaotic entity that had terrorized galaxies was reshaping itself into something entirely new. Energy spike. Lieutenant Hassan called out. Containment field holding. But wait, these readings. It's not trying to break out, Dr. Petrov interrupted, studying his data. It's stabilizing. The molecular structure is reaching its final form. Engineer, hold temperature at current levels. The golden light peaked, forcing them to shield their eyes. When it faded, the creature that remained in the chamber bore little resemblance to the feared Xenox beast. Its surface had transformed into a crystalline lattice of impossible beauty, each facet containing swirling patterns that seemed to tell stories of stellar births and cosmic deaths. Mon Dieu, Juliet whispered. It's perfect. Dr. Petrov's hands trembled as he reviewed the final readings. Commander, the molecular structure has completely stabilized. It's not just stable. It's giving off nutrients. Complex compounds that could revolutionize our understanding of biochemistry. Vixera moved all four hands in a gesture of profound reverence. All this time, we thought they were destroyers of worlds. But they're not destroyers at all, are they? They're transformers, creators. Commander Patel smiled. Doctor, would you say our cosmic friend is ready to meet its dinner guests? Almost, Commander. But first, Dr. Petrov adjusted his glasses with a slight smile. I believe we need to set the table. The station's diplomatic dining hall had never hosted such an extraordinary gathering. The transformed Xenox beast, now a crystalline structure of breathtaking beauty, occupied the center of the specially modified table. Its surface continued to pulse with gentle waves of golden light, each ripple releasing subtle aromas that defied description. Representatives from 3 different species sat around the table, their expressions ranging from wonder to lingering apprehension. Commander Patel had insisted on proper diplomatic protocol, complete with formal place settings and environmental adjustments for each species' comfort. The molecular analysis confirms it's not just safe, Dr. Petrov reported, adjusting instruments that looked more at home in a laboratory than a dining room. It's producing compounds that could revolutionize medicine, nutrition, even space travel. Vixera, joined now by 2 other members of the Luminary Concordat, who had arrived on an emergency diplomatic shuttle, moved all 4 hands in gestures of astonishment. Our ancestors spoke of legendary substances that could heal worlds, restore life to barren planets. We never imagined that the monster under the cosmic bed was actually a cosmic delicacy. Lieutenant Hassan smiled, his earlier caution replaced by wonder. Sometimes the best way to face our fears is to invite them to dinner. Engineer Dubois approached the table with specialized instruments that blended culinary art with scientific precision. The outer layer has crystallized into perfectly portioned segments. Each one contains a unique combination of compounds, like a tasting menu designed by the universe itself. Commander Patel raised her glass in a formal toast. To new understandings, and to the power of looking past our fears to see new possibilities. The first taste was met with silence, then sounds of amazement in multiple languages. The crystalline segments dissolved slowly, releasing cascades of flavors that seemed to tell stories of stellar nurseries and ancient nebulae. It's not just food, one of Vixera's companions whispered, silver skin shimmering with emotion. It's knowledge, understanding. I can taste the journey of stars. Dr. Petrov nodded enthusiastically. The molecular structure suggests these creatures might be natural archives, collecting and preserving cosmic phenomena through their transformations. Their destructive phase could be a survival mechanism, activated when they can't find the right conditions to complete their cycle. And all they needed was the right recipe, Juliet added, monitoring the remaining segment's stability. a way to complete their transformation safely. Commander Patel watched as ancient barriers dissolved along with the crystalline servings. Representatives who had arrived in fear now engaged in animated discussion about research opportunities, cultural exchange programs, and the establishment of specialized culinary science facilities. Commander, Vic Sarah approached with all four hands extended in formal greeting. My people would like to establish a permanent diplomatic mission here. There is much we could learn from each other. Indeed, Commander Patel replied, returning the gesture. Though I suggest we start with cooking lessons. In the weeks that followed, Research Station Horizon became the galaxy's most exclusive dining destination. Species that had warred for generations found common ground over carefully prepared portions of transformed cosmic entities. The Xenox beasts, once feared throughout known space, were reclassified as a protected species of extraordinary cultural and scientific importance. Dr. Petrov established an entirely new field of study, cosmic gastronomy, while Engineer Dubois' modifications to standard containment facilities were adopted as the galaxy's first chain of stellar restaurants. Lieutenant Hassan found himself organizing security for diplomatic dinners rather than defending against cosmic horrors. And if anyone noticed that the most feared predators in known space had been transformed into the galaxy's most exclusive delicacy through the simple application of human cooking techniques, they were too busy enjoying their meals to mention it. In the end, it turned out that understanding truly was just a matter of perspective, and sometimes the best way to face your fears was to serve them with a perfectly paired wine and an open mind.